All right. So, yeah, I'm here with Mike Heestand of Student Press Law Center. He's going to talk with us today about some common copyright concerns that I see as somebody who reviews our Best of Snow and Distinguished Site submissions as part of Snow Sites. And I'm also hoping he can just kind of, uh, you know, let me learn some more about copyright and hopefully let the rest of you learn some more. So, Mike, if you'd like to introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a little bit about Student Press Law Center, then we can dive in.
You bet. So yeah, I am. They call me senior legal counsel for the Student Press Law Center, and my main sort of job here at the SPLC is to manage our legal hotline. So we have a free legal hotline for student journalists, for advisors, for folks that work with students, and we pretty much handle every sort of media law topic that comes in. Censorship is still the number one reason people call us, but copyright has now risen to number two. I've been with the center for about 35 years now. So I started in the early 90s. And at that time, I mean, copyright really was one of those things that, yeah, almost you had to work pretty hard at to violate somebody's copyright. I mean, you had to find the image, you had to find a photocopy machine, you had to find someplace to paste it into your publication. You know, it took some doing. Obviously, with the internet and right clicks and all that kind of stuff, things changed dramatically. And so yeah, we get a lot of calls on copyright, and I do encourage folks. I mean, some we're going to get into some. I was looking at some of the questions that you had shared with me here, and some of them are pretty complex. I mean, particularly when we start talking about fair use, I'm always happy. We're always happy to hear to field questions directly about your specific problem, so we can talk one on one about it.
All right,
I should say
great.
all of our services are free too. So yeah, you're not there's no money out of pocket. So
Yes, as a former advisor, I can't sing Student Press Law Center's praises high enough. So, thank you, Mike, and everybody at SPLC for all that you do. Yeah, so do want to just get into it here. So, in general, like you said, it's become really easy to kind of grab whatever you want off the internet. So, do you have any tips for avoiding copyright infringement that sites might just keep in mind before they find themselves right clicking on something?
yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, the biggest tip is, if you do it yourself, if you create the material yourself, if you're the photographer, you're the artist, you own the copyright, you're not going to have a copyright infringement problem. You have the right to do whatever you want with it. So, and that's kind of, what we're in the business as student journalists do. We want to create our own work where we can. Um, Beyond that, I mean, I think right now one of the big things that I think gets people in trouble sometimes is, yeah, pulling from sites they are not familiar with, pulling from places that maybe they don't know who the actual photographer or creator is. Those are the things that can get you into trouble. And I will say, just kind of as a preliminary matter here, you have been telling your students, I've been telling students for years and years, how important it is to be careful before you're using any sort of copyrighted image. Just for ethically, you want to do it the right way. Editorially, want to make sure you're doing the right way. But right now, the technology is such that while we said please don't do it, you could have problems. Now I can pretty clearly say if you violate people's copyrights out there, you eventually are going to have problems. There's technology out there that lets creators, photographers, embed their work with electronic copyrights. You can't see them with the naked eye, but their bots are out there searching 24/7, looking at the very bottom of your website, looking for matches to those watermarks. And the minute they find one, it's a very mechanical process. They find out who owns the website. They send out no humans are typically even involved early on. They send out a letter saying, hey, we found this image on your website. You either need to show us your license for it, that you have permission to use it, or here's your bill. And those bills start at about $500 and they go up from there. For student media, that's, I had a yearbook advisor call me a few months back. They had gotten hit with four of these things, and it was a bill of a little over $3,000. They were going to have to cut back on how many copies of the yearbook they were going to print. I mean, that's a significant amount of money that we just student media organizations can't avoid. So bottom line is, we're not just like saying, please don't do it. You just can't do it because you will get caught these days.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to cut into your time too much, but I will say at SNO, we get, 5, 6 tickets a year of people who receive those letters from the copyright bots. And it's got the URL, they know right where it is, and asking us then to help them take it off the site. So if we can avoid some of those tickets with the information today, even better here. So.
Yes, yes.
And I know you said this, and I'm aware fair use is very tricky. So whatever you can provide here
Yeah,
would be great. But yeah,
sure.
what can students utilize under that fair use doctrine, and how would you recommend they attribute that content then?
So, fair use is just it's a very important piece of copyright law. I mean, when you look at copyright law, it's kind of this balance that takes place. We're trying to balance, making sure that we are rewarding those people that are creating the work. We're rewarding the photographers, the artists, the writers. Um, because we want to make sure, we are compensating them in a way that they're going to continue to do it. They're going to continue making that stuff that we benefit from. But we need to be able to benefit it from it as well. I mean, if a if a creator is able to create something and then lock it up and nobody can use it, that doesn't really help society as well. So fair use is kind of where that balance comes in. We want to make sure that we have a system in place that allows people that create work to claim credit for it and to be compensated for it. But we also want to, in certain circumstances, be able to talk about some of that stuff that's out there. And so fair use allows you to use limited amounts of copyrighted material in certain circumstances. Um, for journalists, news reporting is one of the big sort of categories that fair use falls into. Doing critiques and reviews is another sort of thing. Fair use, if you're trying to report on a particular topic and there is some sort of intellectual property that is the basis of that. So, a typical sort of fair use example comes up if you're doing a movie review, a book review. As part of that movie or book review, you're allowed to, use a few seconds of the film to illustrate the points that you're making in your movie review, or use a bit of a few passages from the book to illustrate points that you're making in the book. Um, the kind of the one caution I have is that you can't you need to ask yourself initially, why is it that how did the photographer that took this photo, why did they take it in the first place? Um, if and then you ask the same question of yourself, why am I using it? If you're using it for the same reason that the photographer used it, you probably are not in fair use territory. So, if there's a photographer, a photo taken by a New York Times photographer of something that happened in Ukraine today, and you're doing a story on Ukraine, and you like the photo and it helps illustrate the point, um, you know, that's probably not going to be fair use because you're using that New York Times photographer owns that photo. That's how they make their living. That's how the New York Times sells newspapers. And they used it in the context of telling the story of what happened in the Ukraine. If you're doing the same thing, you're probably not in fair use territory. On the other hand, if you were doing kind of a profile perhaps on this particular photographer and you wanted to use this photo as kind of an illustration of how you're talking about this photographer's work, they're different purposes. You are basically using his work. What courts are looking for is some sort of transformation. You're adding something of value to your use. So it's not, you're not using it for the news reporting feature, but you're using it to illustrate your profile on this photographer. Um, the times that you can use photos and things like that, they're limited, but they're important. But just yeah, keep in mind that yeah, there are certainly limits to fair use, and you just can't, just because you're a journalist doesn't mean every use that you use is going to be fair use. Same thing in the classroom. I hear from teachers saying, just, because I'm a teacher, I get to use all these things in my classroom. I will say that the fair use rules for using stuff in a classroom are fairly broad, but those things all, the classroom rules end once you take that work outside a classroom. So simply because you're producing journalism for a student newspaper, if that newspaper stays inside that classroom, it's just a class project that you're putting a newspaper together and that's the end of it. That would be one thing. But the minute you take that newspaper out and circulate it outside the classroom, yeah, pretty much the same fair use rules apply to you as apply to everybody. So. But yeah, fair use
Okay.
is really, really important. Unfortunately, it can get a little complicated. One judge called it the metaphysics of law, which I just thought is because it really is a little bit squishy, and it
Sure.
really is one of those things that we're happy to work with folks with.
Awesome. Great. Thank you for that kind of elaboration on transformation, because I think a lot of people read that and then they get into, physically transforming things through filters and things of that nature. So the idea that you're transforming the content and kind of the not using it in the same purpose, I think is really
Yeah,
helpful to keep in mind. So,
good, good. Yeah.
yeah. And then when people do use something under fair use, sometimes I see sites adding editorial use or fair use within the caption or in the byline. That's not necessary, correct?
Not necessary. Yeah. I mean, you want to make sure that you are attributing the photo just like you would any other sort of photo. You're getting, the photographer's name and whatever they've, if you've gotten it from a particular place or they've asked you to attribute it in a certain way, you want to follow that. The only time where I could see, that fair use sort of thing being perhaps helpful is in the context of like YouTube or something like that, just so that there's, because somebody is eventually going to look at this. And if you're going to make a fair use argument, perhaps before they give you that strike, they can look at it and look at it in that context. But yeah, it's not necessary. And yeah, I don't know if it's going to be helpful in most cases.
Okay, great. Thank you. Uh, and then, so yeah, I would just like to put in here for more information about the fair use doctrine. Mike's answer has definitely been great. There's also a really great FAQ on the Student Press Law Center's website, SPLC.org. So would encourage you all to check that out too. So now getting into multimedia, how about like copyrighted music for things edited into videos and podcasts? What can student media use, and how should they attribute that content then?
So, music is going to be is subject to typically the same sort of copyright rules as any other sort of intellectual property. Um, it can change though, depending on where you're actually posting it. So if you're posting stuff on YouTube, if you're posting stuff on Vimeo, I mean, YouTube is, I mean, it has gotten so behemoth that it has basically created its own copyright system. And so some of the, the traditional copyright rules uh, have to be modified a bit when you're looking at, using it on YouTube. If you're just going to post it on your own site, so if you've done a podcast and you want to, post it on your own site, it's not going on one of these big platforms. Again, pretty much the same sort of copyright rules apply. If you're doing, if you're doing a review of the music or something like that, you can use snippets of the music within the thing. Um, Typically, background music is never going to have any sort of fair use because it's just background music. I mean, you're not adding anything of value to it. You're just using it. Um, if you can't make a fair use argument for the music that you're using, I mean, just like everything else, I mean, you need to reach out and actively get permission. One of the things that I think that I've seen a fair share within student media is this misconception is, that attributing the work is the same as, getting permission to use it. I see, oftentimes, courtesy of Time Magazine or something like that, when they probably have not gone to Time Magazine to actually do it. If you need to get permission, if that's the way that you can legally use this stuff because you can't make a fair use argument, then you need to actually reach out and get affirmative permission. But yeah, so yeah, reaching out to music is a little bit tough. It can get a little bit complicated, especially if we're talking about popular music. That's why there is, all the stock music out there, royalty-free music and things like that. That's production music that's made specifically for, works like that. It just is a lot easier. Otherwise, I mean, if you want to use like the latest you know, uh, pop song or something, you're typically gonna have to reach out to some of the big, ASCAP or BMI, which are big licensing companies, and they're going to charge you a lot of money. And generally speaking, unless Keisha's your aunt or something, you probably want to make sure that you are using production music because you're probably not going to get permission to use some of those big popular songs.
Great. And that's a great lead into my next question. I see a lot of sites using the Pixabay and those kind of stock music sites, which, if you read through the licensing, from what I've ascertained and can understand, it does seem like it's fair to use in your podcast there. But then, the importance of attribution. How should you go about attributing music from those sites like that?
So again, it's going to depend on the site. A lot of the sites actually. So I know YouTube. They have. In fact, I think I pulled it up, but they have a preferred way that they suggest that you attribute stuff. So when you're using, it's for folks that don't know. I mean, YouTube does have a whole bunch of music out there. Some of it is popular music that artists have said it's okay to use, and some of them say it's okay to use, but you're going to pay me for it. You're not going to pay me, but the people that are somebody's going to pay me.
Yeah.
Some not always the case. So if you're going to YouTube and you're looking at one of those approved music pieces, there usually is going to be some sort of attribution note there about how they'd like it attributed.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And yeah, we have added in making sure you attribute any music that you edit into your podcast and videos as part of our multimedia badge now. So those
Good.
of you doing the snow stuff, just make sure you get that in there somewhere. Yeah, so I think that next I'm kind of getting into my section I've called "Is It or Isn't It?" And these are just some things that I've seen as people have submitted for our badges, or just as I've looked at sites over the last few years with snow here. Hopefully, some of these will be pretty no-brainers, even to those of you as I read them out loud here, but Mike can confirm for us.
So
So
is it or isn't it copyright infringement? Is that kind of
that's
okay?
kind of what we're going for. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
the first one here, blatantly, I use the verb stolen, but then in parentheticals, just clearly that right click, downloaded without any type of outreach, image credited to Google Images.
You've answered your own question there, I think. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's stealing. You're going to get in trouble if you do something like that. Yeah.
Same thing with Associated Press, but no photographer attributed. And I think Mike touched on that earlier, especially if you're using it for your own, for the news reporting piece of it. But the AP in general, I think, is fairly protective of their work, kind of like the Times and the other big newspapers, right?
Very protective, and they cost a lot of money. And that's where you are almost certainly. So AP, Reuters, there's a few big companies out there that have signed. There's a company called Pick Rights, which is you've seen a lot of the Pick Rights letters demanding payments. But these companies are acting as agents for these big firms, and yeah, they are scouring the internet, looking for unauthorized use and ready to tag you for it or bill you for it.
Yeah. And so along those same lines, don't be just thinking that you can attribute with even with the photographer's name. You need to reach out to the photographer, reach out to the outlet there.
And do so early. I mean, one of the things,
Okay.
because student media, for the most part, we don't have a budget. We're not able
Mhm.
to pay the big bills that some of these folks would like, and because of that, our requests typically go to the bottom of the pile. So just make sure if you have to have a particular photo, that you're giving yourself plenty of time, and that you're also thinking of backups because in many cases they're just not going to grant that permission.
And yeah, backups is a great kind of segue here into the next set of is it or isn't it things that happen. That's Creative Commons has become really popular. So if you're using Creative Commons, again, that attribution becomes really important. And I'm sure Michael will let me know, but you need to read each individual photo you're going to use has its own unique license tied to it. So you need to dig into that, is my understanding, right?
So important. I mean, so important. And Creative Commons is awesome. It really is one of those really cool things that, new technology is allowed for. But just like with everything, I mean, people have abused it and have created problems for folks. Um, one of the things courts have said is that, yeah, so in order to use a Creative Commons image, you do have to read each individual license. Even if it's the same photographer, they might have tagged individual photos with individual licenses. And so you need to be very clear on what a particular license says for the particular image you want to use. And you have to follow it to a T. And this is where we're seeing some issues. Is that there are some photos out there that I know they were put up online with deliberately complicated or misleading sort of instructions regarding attribution. And what courts have said is if you don't follow the attribution exactly as they've asked for it, basically you violated the contract you have with them, and you're kicked out of Creative Commons, and you're kicked back into normal copyright law. And so, in that case, you don't have the protections of Creative Commons. You would need to actually reach out for affirmative, permission and stuff like that. So, if you're going to use Creative Commons, pay super special attention to that license and follow it to a T. Sometimes they just want their name, but oftentimes, they want their name, they want a particular page on their website linked to. Um, yeah, it's just be really, really careful. During COVID, I saw there was this image of it was just a clip art, basically. It wasn't clip art, but it was just a stock image of a syringe. And that syringe, I mean, everybody wanted to do, a little story, have a little image to talk about, vaccine policies or whatever they were writing at the
Mhm.
time. And that particular syringe had a very complicated attribution license. And I know I'm convinced it was put up there simply to catch people and to then be able to, go after them. So one thing too in using Creative Commons, and it's a pain in the butt, but I think, if you're using a Creative Commons image, start up a file, somewhere where you are downloading the actual image, and you have a time and a date on it, and you're just sticking it aside, so that if anybody ever challenges you on that, for whatever reason, you at least have that, what you saw, and when you actually decided to use it. It's cumbersome, but unfortunately some bad actors have kind of, I think, made that necessary.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Having like that spreadsheet or something where you can refer back to when all that information that you obtained. I see a lot, people submitting Creative Commons photos with just Creative Commons as the only attribution. So as Mike just pointed out, please stop doing that. And we have a support article that I wrote after kind of digging into Creative Commons and how complicated and detailed these attributions can be. So SNO has a support article on how you can embed links within your caption, because some of
Excellent.
those attributions require you linking back to the photographer and the
Yeah.
photo all within the same caption. So,
Yeah.
yeah. How about I see this one a lot. So, screenshots downloaded from Pew Research Center.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Pew Research Center. They do great work. I mean, so whether you're going to Pew, whether you're going to Knight Foundation, whether you're going to wherever you're going, it really is up to them, to that organization, to decide how they want to allow you to use it. So, I would go to the Pew Research Place, look at their terms of use. Lots of them often have maybe a press page or something like that, where they would list some information about how to use their stuff. But they are going to own the copyright on those graphics. And if you just are using the graphic for the purpose in which Pew used it, yeah, you'll want to make sure that you're clear on what they're allowing you to do. In many cases, they want you to use it. I mean, but you want to make sure that you see that in writing. And if you don't see it in writing, reach out to their press person and ask for permission.
Okay. All right. That's good
Permission
to
is
know.
always kind of the bottom resort. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're just not clear, just reach out and ask.
Okay. All right. Great. Um, And now we're getting into what's probably going to start getting a little muddier here. So, uh, people go and they take a photo of media playing on a computer screen or a TV screen, kind of over somebody's shoulder or from the back of their living room. I've seen some people taking pictures of movie screens. Please keep your phones away in the movie theater. That's just as a former movie assistant movie theater manager. Please do that. But these pictures of screens playing the media, how does that work?
So, whether the image is the actual image or you're taking it, looking over somebody's shoulder and it's on their computer screen, I mean, it's still copyrighted. And so generally the same sort of rules are going to apply. Now, the only exception might be is, if the focus of the picture is the person using the computer and it just happens to be that they have some copyrighted material up there, if it's just kind of used in an insubstantial way, you're not focused on it, you're not really trying to get the sound from it or anything like that. It just kind of comes up and and leaves. You're probably okay with that. I mean, if it's just a quick flash or something like that. But what you don't want to do is, yeah, you don't want to focus. You don't want to just take a picture of the screen or anything like that. Again, unless that is if that's part of the news story that you're doing, they've got new computers in the school, and you're
Yeah.
taking pictures of people using computers, you're probably fine, having that as long as the focus is on the users and the incidental use is just of what's on the screen.
Okay. Excellent. Great clarifications there. Thank you. Um, so then what if somebody creates a new graphic on Canva, but within it they've got like a collage where they've pulled in then some clearly copyrighted images?
Yeah, those all the copyrighted images, unless you are really working them over. I mean, copyright law does allow you to to take other people's work and really transform it. And if you transform it enough so that when people see what you've created, they see your work first, your new work first, but maybe there's this flavor of somebody else out there. Uh, you know, there is some that's where kind of the squishiness of fair use and things come into play. But there is some ability to do that. Um, but yeah, if it's clear, if you can just clearly see the very clear copyrighted image within the Canva thing, all those are going to need to get clearance.
Okay. All right. It's very good to know there. Um, and then I'm still new to Canva, kind of learning it myself here. They seem to have an image library on Canva. So have you had any experience with that? Do you know what the terms are
I
there?
was asked this question, so I had to get some experience in this. Yeah,
Okay.
so it kind of depends, I guess, on whether you are a paid, however you've signed up for it. I think there's like pro version or something like that, a paid version. And if that's your package, you actually don't have to attribute those images. You can use them without attributing them. They made that very clear. Other users, however, apparently there is some attribution required. So if you're using the full version, I guess they say that's fine.
Okay. All
For
right.
it may be one of the things. So that's the legal piece. I mean, the one thing that may kick in, that may want you to provide some sort of attribution is just plagiarism. I mean, if you want to be careful not to present a Canva image necessarily as your own. And so there may be times where it is important to provide some sort of attribution, if you think there's any chance of there being some sort of misleading publication there. But
All
that's mainly
right.
for ethical reasons.
Yeah. All right. Very good to know. All right. And then I think the last one I have here. So we get a lot of photos attributed to a source in the story. Typically, this is student athletes or performing arts sources.
Mhm.
You know, the student
Yeah.
has gone to a professional photographer site and say, "Hey, that photo of me getting the touchdown looked really awesome. Here, take this photo, run it in the paper." So, who who is the onus on to obtain that copyright or that permission from the photographer? Does the subject of the photo, I'm assuming they don't have any permission to be giving that away the way they often do.
Probably not. Yeah, yeah. If it's certainly if it's taken by a professional photographer, they're going to be uh, they're almost always going to be the owners. They're going to retain ownership to that photo, and so you would need to actually go to the photographer to get clearance. I mean, there is most student media don't do this, but I mean there are deal forms you can sign and things like that, basically hold harmless things that just basically say, if you're submitting something to me, you're telling me, you're promising me, that you have permission to do this. And if it turns out not to be the case, then I can sue you for, after the photographer sues me, I can sue you to get my money back. But we probably don't want to have to go through any of that stuff. So yeah, just I'd be very leery of any photo that isn't clearly taken by, the person submitting it, or mom or dad or something like that.
Yeah, and so with that being my last example, it's kind of a nice full circle moment there. If you're looking for a photo of a student athlete or a student in the performing arts, if you can send your photographer there to get the photo
Yes,
yourself. Anytime you can create your own original work, that's going to be the best work around there. So
that's
uh,
true.
those were all the questions I had. Mike, do you have anything else you'd like to add as
The
since
only
I've
thing maybe we didn't really talk about was AI. I mean, and
okay.
just we are in this weird moment right now where, courts are still really trying to catch up with AI and trying to figure out a lot of the rules and things like that. Um, a lot of people ask, well, who owns, when I put the prompt into AI and I get back this image, can I use this without, having copyright problems? Who owns that image? And at least right now, it looks like, you're the prompt writer is probably going to be the owner of that image. Um, it's gonna get messier. I mean, because a lot of this is going to be dependent on, how many sources AI is pulling from. If it's pulling from one source, in a big way, and it really looks like this one particular, photographer or artist's work, you may be getting into difficulty. But at least for right now, for like a chat GPT, which does pull from lots and lots of sources, for at least right now, courts are pretty much saying if you wrote the prompt, you have the right to use your image. Now, the Copyright Office has said that they are not going to register, at least for now, they're not going to register images unless they're made entirely by humans. So you won't be able to enforce if somebody else uses your AI generated image in their work. You won't be able to enforce a copyright action against them like you could for, photos and things that you take. But you certainly are free to use it. You don't have a copyright problem in using it. Um, so that's AI. The other thing, I just remember to remind your students too that, in addition to copyright, typically for us as students is what can we use? But keep in mind that you also own the copyright to everything that you create. And so if others, and we're starting to see this, we're starting to see a lot of student media work being pulled in by, offshore websites or things like that. Just recognize that you have the right to tell others you don't want them to use your work, in the same way that they can tell you that you can't use, their work. So it's a two-way street for creators and student journalists.
Yeah, and I think on SPLC, you all actually provide forms, or you'll help draw up some forms if the publication, for example, wanted to claim ownership over photos taken by staff photographers, because by default, me as the photographer, I own the photo even if it's in the student publication, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, at least for
Okay.
for most high school student media, as long as you're not paid as an employee, you're basically treated as what's called independent contractor, and you retain your individual copyright to the individual works that you create. That's correct.
Awesome. That's great to know, because I see a lot of our students out there putting watermarks on their stuff, kind of having
Yeah.
their own photo side hustle there. So that's very important to know. And thank you for bringing that up, Mike. I definitely forgot about that. On the AI side of things, I was just so unsure of if the courts had even settled on it yet. So thank you for that
They
information
haven't. They
too.
haven't yet.
Yeah.
So
All right. Well, yeah, Mike, thank you so much. And thank you for everything that SPLC does. And thank you for taking time out of your day. I know you are so busy right now to talk with us about this, because I know on our side of things, it seems like it's a pretty major issue for us here in terms of the legal issues we see at SNO. I know censorship is very big over at SPLC. So,
yeah. Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for asking me. I appreciate it. Yeah. And again,
yeah.
people need more specific sort of help. I'm happy to help them through our hotline.
All right. Yep. And you can get that at splc.org. So
Yep.
thank you, everybody, for watching. And thanks for you. Yeah, all you do with journalism.
All right. Take care.